Right, let's get going. So good morning, good afternoon. Welcome everybody to Friday office hours. And when we get to the last Friday in a month, we often do a special topic session. So today we're going to talk about integrations and connectors. And I've got a panel of enthusiastic experts who spend a lot of time working with integrations to come and share their advice and their gotchas and some of their favorite ways of doing this. So welcome to the panel and welcome to everybody who's joining the call. Because this is a topic session, we're not going to take general questions as we often do, and the panelists are going to do a little more show and tell than they would on our other sessions. But otherwise, the usual rules apply. We definitely welcome questions about integrations and connectors in your experience. And as usual, the routine is if you could please put your questions in the chat first, and we'll answer them as we go along or incorporate them into what we're talking about. Because there's a number of you on the call, I'd be grateful if you could keep yourself muted unless, of course, you're presenting or answering or asking a question. If we need some more details about what you put in chat, then we'll ask you to speak up. But otherwise, please keep, as I say, please keep yourself muted. Right, that's enough housekeeping. So we're going to talk about integrations and connectors. I mean, connectors in this here has a very sort of special sense, or there's a special meaning to it, isn't there? And it's interesting because I think even perhaps the last time we talked about integrations on office hours, integrations still seem to be these very complicated things that you required developers to build for you and ways to connect different Salesforce systems. And I think one of the things that's been interesting over the developments over the last few years is how there are more tools now available that allow you to do a bit more of a sort of do-it-yourself integrations. And we're going to talk about some of those tools that exist really to connect one online digital system, database system with Salesforce. And I know, people use it. People use things for, I don't know, what do people link? Maybe it's legacy databases. And I think you're going to talk about something that may be to do with your admissions system, Nick. I know people link accounting systems. There are all kinds of scenarios where websites are another big one where you may need to use some of these connector tools. So let's talk about some of the experience that people have. And as I say, if you have questions, please put them in the chat and we'll talk. But when we were discussing before we started this session, Tyler was the one who confessed to the fact that this was his favorite area to talk about. So we decided that we'd have him speak first. So Tyler, you've been using Jitterbit or part of Jitterbit as your integration tool. Do you want to tell us a bit more about what you do with it, what you're connecting, what your experience has been?
Sure, I'm happy to kick off. I'm Tyler Colby. I'm the CRM director at the NRDC. Previous to my role at the NRDC, I was an integration architect and leading all the integration efforts at the agency I was with. And I love integrations. I didn't stumble upon integrations and my love for them until far too late in my career, and it has promptly taken over most of my brain space. Sitting right next to me is the recommended book that Salesforce recommends, the Enterprise Integration Patterns. I'm holding it up, although nobody can see my camera. Okay. It is nighttime reading for me and one of my favorite things. So we're delving into a topic that
Tyler, I think
a little extreme. It is to me a puzzle and something that as you delve into this topic, it's like working with data, but working with data that's fluid and in motion. And there's always fun gotchas that you have to think through that is just fun. So I'm happy to take over presenting and kind of dive in. but I just wanted to give some context to where I'm coming from with this whole discussion. And the integrations that I've led in the past have been with nonprofits of all sizes. So I'm going to go through two tools today. One is called Skyvia, and kind of starts us off at the entry level of integrations and kind of automating batch jobs. And then I'm going to talk through a very simple use case of Jitterbit and all of that. But to start off, I did throw together a quick PowerPoint because I figured why not? This is my favorite topic in the world. So it's only 3 slides.
Right. Overachiever, but there you go. Thank you very much.
Yep. So the first thing is when you're looking at starting an integration project, just some of the things that come in, should pop into your mind right away. And the first one, and I put this at the as the first bullet point, is review why the integration is needed before you even start off on an integration project. There's been a lot of projects that we're working through the scoping stage. We'd be working through the scoping stage, and the reasons why the data would be needed in both systems wasn't really fleshed out. And making sure that it's a good use case for an integration, not just because we want data to be in both places, but that it's really serving a business purpose is important. And the bullet point I put here is that sometimes the best integration project is not building an integration is very true. That just because we can integrate things doesn't mean that we always should. Although there's plenty of reasons that we definitely should, including eliminating dual entry, making sure that systems stay in sync, that information is flowing in a good way. Those are all great reasons. But if there's not a great reason to do it, maybe we should rethink, is this integration even something that we should go down and do? Make sure that you have your project stakeholders in the room as well. So sometimes the business use case that we're thinking through will be 90% of the data that's flowing through, but sometimes that remaining 10% is going to come from different stakeholders in the room that may use one of these systems in a different way, and we need to talk through what those use cases are. Can we remove those things from the integration? Can we, what things do we need to take into account for that type of data? And also review your system limitations and trade-offs. This kind of gets into the gotchas category, and this can range from all over the place. I've seen things where systems will do a hard delete on a record instead of doing a soft delete like Salesforce does, where the record is just gone. And if you're trying to capture that hard delete, it may just not be possible. So make sure you're looking through what are my system limitations, and they're going to be different no matter what system you're working with. Make sure you're choosing the right tool as well. So, just because you can go out and have Jitterbit, or even just because you have Jitterbit and maybe you have a Jitterbit Harmony license lying around, or I know we're going to talk through Boomi later. Maybe MuleSoft has gotten in your ear. Those are all great tools. But sometimes you just need to automate a single spreadsheet. And sometimes that's just easier to do with something like a Skyvia or Jitterbit. Sometimes you do need bigger tools. So make sure that you're looking through each of the tools. And I put some examples down here. I'm happy to put those in the notes after we're done here today. And there's lots of other integration tools. ETL is an environment that is growing rapidly, and there's lots of things out there. And my last slide, I promise, so final integration recommendations is find a partner with experience, especially as you start to look through more of these more complex integrations, on-time integrations, dual, bidirectional syncing, things in multiple systems. Make sure you're working with a partner that can help you, help guide you through the process. Ask questions. So not only in the Salesforce and Hub forums, because we do have integration experts in both of those fields, but also hit up the integration platforms forums. Most of these platforms have specific forums with users that have gone through and most likely experienced the exact same troubles that you have. So make sure to ask, and don't just release off or bang your head against a wall forever. Stop and just ask if you're getting stuck. And finally, always test your integration functionality in a sandbox. Even the best laid plans sometimes aren't the best. I know I had one integration that would have just spun on for eternity and filled up an entire Salesforce org with infinite records if I had let it run. So always test that functionality in a sandbox. Keep a close eye on these things because this is just like code, except it's code that's going to be, moving a lot of data and changing a lot of things. So that being said, let me stop the PowerPoint and let's jump into some demos. So what I did was I spun up a fresh developer org. So you can probably recognize some of the fresh developer org names or account names if you've worked with one before. This is kind of the old integration showing you that there's nothing in the hat prior to things going in. So the first stop that I'm going to do is with Skyvia. Skyvia is a tool that I absolutely adore. It works really well for a lot of nonprofits because they have a very generous free tier. So the free tier that they use or that they provide allows you to do a lot of different things, including automating imports. So if you're getting a spreadsheet on a weekly basis, maybe with your donations from a source, it allows you to set up an automation that will pick that data up and allow you to put it into Salesforce. And most of the time we can, with most nonprofits that I've met with, especially on the smaller side, if you're not using a ton of data, it allows you to get that data in for free, even with some fairly complex automation. It also has a great backup demo. So I'm going to start off just walking through a backup operation that I set up here, and it's extremely simple. So to do this, you can see I just wanted something with this, and the use case here would be, backing up my account and contact information. So, that most core data to the business, making sure that that's kind of set to the side in a separate location. So what we have here is a source and a target, and I'm going from Salesforce, and this is my hub demo Salesforce instance, over to Dropbox, and I have a folder set aside just for the hub office hours. You can see that this data was last moved in on 6/19, and this is very simple. So I just pretty much point one to the other, selected all fields, and it's just going to run. If I hit run right now and hit OK, it'll queue up for a few seconds, and then it'll start to run, and it'll just push that data right over. One thing I will say about Skyvia is you can see right now we are still queued. This is fairly typical, especially of the free tier. So within the free tier, jobs may take a little bit longer to start. You can see now it did start to run. I have seen this take sometimes you'll be placed in the queue for quite a while, sometimes in the span of hours. This case, it went very quickly. So we backed up 25 records. I've been making changes to this to get ready for today's demo, 25 seconds. And if we come over here, you can see that these were changed just a few seconds ago. So I have now a CSV of both my accounts and contacts. I can rest a little bit easier at night knowing that those are backed up. But this entire operation took maybe 2 minutes to set up. So extremely simple to set up a backup operation for your organization and make sure that you're protecting that key data. If we start to look at something a little bit more complex, and again, I kept these fairly simple, is taking a flat file. I just called it new contacts, but let me open up that flat file, just give an idea. And I know that Dropbox is kind of truncating things and moving things in an area, but what I did here was we have 3 contacts, some address information, what organization they're tied to, and then they also a donation, and it has a close date at the end. And I know a lot of times when we at the NRDC we have lots of different donation channels. So we have social channels, we have all these different places. A lot of times this is exactly how we'll get the data. It'll be one flattened line of data with contact, opportunity, just data all the way across the row where we have to split that into different portions. And what's great about Skyvia is even though this is a free tool, it allows us to do this. So I'm actually going to dig into the transformation a little bit here and talk through this. So as you set up a transformation, again, sorry about that. again, you have a source. So we're saying we're taking a CSV from Dropbox, and you get to say what we're picking up and where our target is. We can even do things like specify the task order. So this is similar to if you're using the bulk API, are we taking this in order, this serialized version, or can we allow the bulk API in Salesforce to process things in whatever order it hits the queue first? In this case, we need to preserve that task order. I wanted to make sure that my account was loaded before contact was loaded before opportunity. So kind of thinking through, like if you're doing a traditional data load, how are you loading these records in what order with which object? You want to mirror that exact same thing within this operation. I'm going to hit edit and just talk through a little bit of what this transformation looks like. Within here, we're specifying we can use a file mask. File mask is a really neat feature where you can pick up, so say this was new contacts, but it had a date appended to the end. We could use a file mask to say only pick up today's dates. So it's only picking up the newest information. Within this target, we can decide what we're doing, and we can add as many related things off of this tree that we would like. So we can add, if I hit add related on the top, it'll be a related item to accounts. If I add related here, I can also add related items to that contact record as well. So maybe there was task information that was assigned here, or we wanted to log a task, we could do that as well. And we can choose between our 4 different Salesforce operations. And then we get into the transformation. And from here, what's really great, so I'm going to click on this first column here. So in our spreadsheet, it was called organization, and that was our account name. So we're saying that we're taking the column organization and mapping it over to account name. We can also choose different things here. So it doesn't always have to be just data that's on a spreadsheet. It could be a constant. So below, the country was not coming through, but say we only take donations from the United States, I can put USA in even though that data is not coming through, and that'll just be a constant. I can do expressions, so that's formulas. And then target and source lookup are also really great. That's going to get more into the advanced features of Skyvia, but great features that they have as well. So a lot of functionality here. And you can see that I did the same for account contact, or the contact object, so mapping some things through, and then the same for opportunity. So just making sure that we have all those fields mapped. And once we have this all set, I can go back to our operation page and hit run. And sometimes, again, these will take quite a while. I know the last one, it says that it finished at 8:28 a.m. I'm not up that early. I had started it the night before, and it took almost 12 hours of sitting in the queue. So time sensitivity and Skyvia don't play too well together. So sometimes it does take quite a while, but if you're looking to just get an admin out of the process of processing a spreadsheet, making sure that it's going through, this is a great way to automate. That being said, I'm going to switch over now to a more robust tool, which is Jitterbit, and I'm going to fly through the Jitterbit portion because I know I'm taking a ton of time right now.
But that's great. The only other thing I was just going to say, obviously, if you're a nonprofit success pack user, I mean, you can do a lot of this sort of similar transformations with the MPSP data import. But the great thing about something like Skyvia is that it's not tied very specifically to something like the MPSP. So indeed, you could use it for any kind of mapping of data, as you suggested, which is great.
Absolutely. And I use this example just as a, for that purpose, because this was, easy to digest. This is something that we get data for all the time. But yes, you could use this for any Salesforce object and any type of data.
Great. Okay.
So Jitterbit gets a little bit more complex, and I used almost the exact same example that we went through on the other side. So the CSV that we have set up is structured exactly the same with just a little bit different data. So a few names, organization names, and then donation amounts and close dates at the end. And you can see here that it looks a little bit different. So this is the offline or desktop version of Jitterbit. They have recently launched a cloud version that is available as well. But this is the offline version, and this is the paid full version. And what's great about Jitterbit is you can do, it's extremely flexible. So you can do pretty much any integration that you're looking to do with this, including pinging out to APIs or picking up things from a local database. And you're not quarantined and just making sure that, or having just one source and one target per operation set or operation flow like we have here. You can chain together, this could be from a CSV on the first operation and a database on the second, sending it to an API in the third. So it's very flexible. Where Skyvia, you're limited to just one source and just one destination per operation flow. So it allows just a lot more creativity, but a lot more room for change. So what's great about Jitterbit and what I really like is when you do get into the transformations, if it responds, here we go. Everything is graphical. So this is a very straightforward transformation. So we have really just two things. We have one column coming from our source over to our target. I know this is super tiny on your screen. So this is the organization over to the organization or the account name. And then in the description, you have a full transformation window. In this case, I just put, this is from our healthcare acquisition list. And just a quick comment, but you can get into all sorts of different functions and write your own custom code for this. So it can get very complex very quickly. And what I love about Jitterbit is that as soon as you, and I closed my window, of course, because it's a demo, but as soon as you hit go, it is going, and this data is going to go in extremely fast. So it's deploying this real quick. And then this data, instead of having to queue and wait behind, because this is running on usually on premises, is just going to go through extremely fast. So you can see, Skyvia is still pending, but usually by the time that I refresh the screen, we're at least going to have all of our accounts already in from Jitterbit. So within the matter of seconds, it's already loading that data.
There's a question about whether you can, well, there's an auto download the Salesforce weekly data backup, but I was also wondering, can you schedule with either of these tools?
Yep, so Jitterbit's scheduling is similar. I always liken it to like Outlook scheduling. So you can get into daily, weekly, monthly, and then any combination of those, or you could do like the 28th of each month. So it can get very complex, including time. Skyvia is not as robust. So you can schedule it to do like a daily, but it doesn't allow you that same granularity that Jitterbit does. So there's going to be trade-offs, and you just want to make sure as you're choosing your integration platform to just on the time. But I'm happy to answer any questions either now, or we can move on and I can answer them in chat as well.
Okay, that's great. Yes, I think we just suddenly lost your screen. I thought we'd lost you altogether, Tyler, but you're still there, which is great. I think let's move on to Nick, but if you could take a look at what's in chat when you have a moment. So, but that was great. That's thank you. That's showing one of a sort of more straightforward and simple way to start, and then a really complex tool. And yeah, I mean, you said about Jitterbit getting complex. I worked for a number of years with an organization with a Jitterbit integration that Veronica Waters had built, Veronica Watersback, and it's amazing. We had, I don't know, about 14 or 15 steps, and it was transforming thousands of ticket records that were coming in from an external ticketing system every night. So it did an amazing job. Right, Nick, so you've been working with Dell Boomi. Let's hand over to you and tell us about the tool you've been using. And I think you may still be muted, Nick. Nick, are you still there you go. Are you connected to audio?
Aha!
Aha!
That's red button.
There you go. Yes, we could see coming into your screen, but I'm now seeing what everybody's telling me about how GoToMeeting has changed completely. All these amazing initials, because I still see the old, I still see my classic control panel, as it were, but it looks very different for
Sure.
everyone else. Yeah, there you go. All right, over to you, Nick.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, sorry about that there. And Tyler, great minds are thinking alike in terms of kind of thinking about, what are the different options out here. And just want to showcase kind of when we're talking integrations and connectors, a good friend of mine, Dan Flanagan, when I've talked integrations with him before, he always shows me this screen. And this screen I'm happy to post on to the office hours later. Kind of gives you a gamut of all the different solutions that live out there that you can connect. And you see across the top is the time to implement, and down below is more of kind of that licensing cost, or how much does it cost to implement these solutions. And so I come from a nonprofit, strappy nonprofit background, so I lived a lot on the left-hand side here with Apsona and kind of the different data loader S tools. And now at the University of Minnesota, I'm now living on the right-hand side. And so I've totally jumped the whole gamut here, and we're using Boomi specifically for our corporate relations here at the Carlson School of Management where I work. And kind of just painted a little bit of picture here. We have a lot of different data sources to do different things. And so there's a lot of different point solutions. So we have PeopleSoft for our student tracking system. We're using Slate for our missions. We're using all these other different tools to do, whether it be kind of job postings or even course management. So there's all these different solutions. And unless I ruled the world and had billions of dollars, I couldn't get all of those into Salesforce just to use Salesforce to do all that data. But we want to have a connected view. You probably hear at Dreamforce and at the different sessions, the concept of a connected nonprofit, a connected campus, connected whatever that may be. And recently they just announced, Dreamforce last year, they announced the concept of Customer 360. I think they're rebranding it now to potentially call the Customer Data Platform. And really, kind of if you look at the screenshots, what they show is very similar to what you see on the page here, a bunch of different sources that may or may not be Salesforce, and you want to kind of feed that into a central location to know kind of everything about that person. So not just, what donation do they make, but maybe what programs have they been a part of, or for us, maybe what classes are they taking, what student groups are they a part of, what jobs is a student applying for. And so that's really what kind of set us off in the direction of integrations and going down the Boomi route. And so really the screen here is to kind of show the concept of what we're doing with Boomi and setting of data, specifically right now the company or the account data into Salesforce. And we're actually using another topic called the Master Data Hub or Master Data Model. And that concept is really saying, hey, I want to have a golden record. And so the concept would be that, say, US Bank or 3M, two good old Minnesota companies, live in each one of these systems. And so maybe someone is applying for an MBA program through Slate, or 3M is posting jobs for our current students, or maybe 3M is purchasing courses for our campus or through our campus to send their employees. There's a lot of different data points there that we want to know how 3M is related to us. And each of those systems also have different data. So for instance, probably the job posting, the website is going to be the career website versus say the Slate or doing our missions or even the marketing cloud. Those websites may be different in those different systems. And so you need to have a kind of a hierarchical approach of what wins and what doesn't. And so let's just kind of go over to Boomi, specifically what they call the Master Data Hub. And let's just look at 3M here and how 3M works. First, with how Master Data Hub works is there's, actually let me go back to kind of the plumbing here. And so the concept is that we would use one of Boomi's tool, basically integration. I think it's kind of think of what Tyler was describing with Skyvia, and Boomi kind of takes that and does a lot, just puts that on steroids. And so you can have these different data sources, and so I can literally have a connector to Salesforce to get data, have a mapping file very similar to what Tyler was showing in his solution, and then I can also send it right to Boomi, specifically their master data hub or their master data model. So I can kind of have these quick little shapes to get data, and then in turn, that data will show up in their master data hub. And so those fields, 3M, their address, their website, some of those different data points all show up here. And the concept is that now I have this clean record that I can send to these different sources. And so, maybe I want to grab data from Salesforce, but maybe I know the website from PeopleSoft or wherever the other website is or other place, I can send that data out. And so it becomes kind of this two-way sync of contacts and accounts. It can be really powerful. So here's the data, and then here's the sources. So I can also see here's all the sources that this 3M records lives. And by the way, the IDs that also exist. So kind of building that sphere of data that can be done. And so kind of translating that over to how does this get into Salesforce, or how can it go from Salesforce? So it may be kind of funny to think of an example where I'm going to grab data from Salesforce and dump it somewhere else, and then in turn actually send it back. So here's a Boomi process where I'm grabbing data from Salesforce, or just out earlier, dumping it into the hub, and actually I have a second process then that is taking that data from Boomi and then going, hey, what happened here? Did a record get created? Did a record get updated? Did a record get deleted? Specifically in that golden record, did something happen in that golden record? And if something happened, let's send it over to Salesforce to then maintain that record. So things like addresses or things like website or phone numbers or what have you can be really housed there. One of the other things that you can do that's pretty powerful with Boomi, and now I gotta get to the right page here, is that you can do some data cleanup. And so the concept is that if I want to make sure confirm my addresses are correct, and then in turn send it to all these other systems. So the kind of thing about MDM is if I have a data set and all these different data sets or different sources, and I want to send to all these different places, let's go ahead and do that. Oh, I don't think I can click on that one here. Let me go to my draft version here. And so kind of think of the hub as really kind of your Rolodex, your place of data. And you maybe want to do your data cleanup here. So some people may think of Salesforce as doing kind of average verification or things along those lines in Salesforce. Really, we're doing that same concept. We're just shifting where it's going, because I'm not taking Salesforce as a nucleus now. This master data hub or this master data model is my nucleus. And so I can do things like verifying addresses or validating the company information, or even in terms sending out to other systems that I may have kind of verification services or other servers or databases that I have clean data, so I can send data to and from those different places. That's really what Boomi is out of the box. And I think I'll stop there because I think there's plenty of other things we can kind of talk through, but I think that's where we'll kind of stop the chat for the moment.
That's really interesting, Nick. And I mean, this idea that you're actually pulling information both in and out of Salesforce, I guess we're so used to the idea that Salesforce is that golden record, is the system of where all these things happen. I mean, do you think that's because Salesforce, you have so many different systems, and Salesforce perhaps came into the organization a little later, and so you wanted somewhere that wasn't Salesforce to be your master hub?
Yeah, and that's I think that's a great point there, Caroline, and that is very, very similar. That's actually what happened is that PeopleSoft has been at the university now for 10, 15, 20 years. And the data that's in that record is seen as the source of truth. But if I want to have that data in Salesforce and maybe have a user that wants to edit that student record, I can do that in Salesforce, but I can't necessarily do that in PeopleSoft. And so having kind of that combination of where the edit's being made and what wins really has been where our focus point is. And Boomi has some really cool stuff where even at a field level, I can rank sources on terms of, hey, I want to have field, I think I can go over here. Nope, I'm on the wrong page. Oh, never mind, it's up here. I can have this ranked sources, and so for each of these fields, I can say which field is, do I trust the address in PeopleSoft more than say I trust the fact that's in another system. So I can literally drop and drag which tools wins in each situation there. So that's really helps us kind of create that, what is really that source of truth and not just the system of truth.
That's really interesting. Yeah. You've obviously stunned the rest of the audience into silence as well. Does anyone have any other questions or anything that they're intrigued about what Nick's doing? And you're right. You've definitely moved to the other end of the scale now, haven't you? This is big and complex and a lot of records and a very sophisticated tool.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe one thing I'll mention, I think there was a question before I went from Jennifer specifically about the customer data platform or the customer 360, and that's actually why where we want to go is actually purchasing that tool, as we've really subscribed to having something that's a Salesforce product to be kind of that hub. It doesn't necessarily have to be our Salesforce account record, but it has to be something that's a Salesforce product. And I think until this week, it was still in pilot phase. I think it now just became GA, if I understood correctly. And so we are working with our account executive to learn more about what can happen with that solution and effectively kind of do the same concept with that solution. And I think there's a lot of MuleSoft, from my glean, it's a lot of kind of the MuleSoft work that goes into that tool. So more to come. Maybe 6 months from now, I can showcase what we're doing there, but I don't have anything good outside of saying that it was in pilot. It's very much the same concept. It's just on the Salesforce platform versus on Boomi's platform.
Fantastic, thank you. There's a question just come in from Cheryl. Thanks, Cheryl, for Nick or maybe Tyler as well. My organization currently uses Jitterbit, and we face a situation where we'd like a mapping to look for field A, but if field A doesn't exist, grab the value of field B instead. Does Boomi have more flexibility than Jitterbit for this?
There's some of that. Let me go into this side of it. On the mapping phase side of things, there's kind of a section here called functions. So on Thunderbolt on the left side, here's all my fields from my source. And on the right side, all the fields that I'm wanting to send it to and dropping and dragging. But there's this concept of functions, and I can do stuff like I have here where I'm doing data cleanup. But there are some stuff where you can add some different properties, or even some if-then, this get document property or this dynamic process property. There's some interesting things, even the custom scripting, where I can literally write out some code types of things to say if it's not an A, pick B. So there's some stuff that you can do there. I haven't had a specific example for how to do it, but there's a couple avenues or a couple roads that you can go down to get to that point. I don't know if Tyler, on the Jitterbit side, if you've played with that.
So Tyler had put in chat. Can you hear us still, Tyler? Because yes, you've put in chat that you can do it in the paid version. All right, my mute button is giving. All right, Tyler's trying to chat, but has said that you can't do it on the free platform, but you could do it with their Harmony. Interesting. If your mute button keeps spinning, then yes, maybe you can give us a few more details, or reach out to Cheryl separately about that. Okay. All right. And yeah, we have Harmony. I was told we were stuck, and she says she's going to do some digging. Oh, and Barbara is suggesting maybe actually doing something on the Salesforce side. So bringing the information in and then picking which field it should be. Okay, great, thank you. All right, I'm conscious of where we are with the time. So this is, I'm just mesmerized actually by all these complicated things you can do with that, Nick. It's wonderful. Thank you very much for that. Thanks. So Matthew, you were going to talk to us a little bit about Zapier. I don't know whether you wanted to actually demo something or just chat a bit. What would you like to?
Hi, yeah, I can. I'm not going to do a live demo, but I can show a few things.
Go on then. All right. Let's make you the
Hi, everyone. I am Matthew Scholtz, and I am one of the co-founders of Percolator Consulting. We are a Salesforce.org partner, and we do a lot of Salesforce projects. We work only with nonprofits, and we have done a lot of integration work over the years, including some fairly hairy stuff with Jitterbit that's a little bit on the complicated side, like the other two presenters just showed. But lately, we've also been doing some more simple integrations with Zapier or Zapier. I never know the right way to pronounce it. People pronounce it different ways. So I was going to show a little bit of that. A little more on the simple end, and then see if there's any questions from folks. And part of the reason I want to show this is that I think if you're considering an integration, one of the hard questions is where do you start and what's the right platform? There are definitely some situations where something like Jitterbit or Boomi you really need something that can operate at that level. Other times something simpler can do and can be a lot easier to set up. So we talk a little bit about some of the considerations there. And I am looking for, where is the screen share? Oh, here we go.
Yeah, you may have got a pop-up to accept something from me. Yeah, there you go. Great, we can see it.
Okay.
Now. Thanks.
Can you see? Okay, and you see this little chart?
Yeah,
little table of pricing and stuff. Okay, so I'm just gonna talk generally about what Zapier is and what it can do, what it can't do, and show a couple of examples, although not a live demo. So what Zapier is it's an integration platform that, in contrast to some of the others you've seen, really operates on a sort of one message or one record at a time model. So it's not really built to take whole tables of data, whole databases, and sync them back and forth with a large volume, although you could probably make it do something like that. It's really meant more for, or where it I think works best is for lower volume situations where when something happens in one application, you need to make something happen in the other application, and you're not talking about thousands of things happening per day. Lower volume things that should happen more or less at the right as they're happening. And one of the reasons low volume works better here is that Zapier does price based on volume, right? So you have these various tiers, and they give you a maximum cap on how many, what they call tasks, can be run in a month under each plan. I won't go into exactly what a task is. Basically, it's a step in an integration process. So if you have something there's tens of thousands of records or events being created every month, and they all need to be synced over, then this can add up pretty quickly, and it may not be the right platform for you. So let's just take a look at what a very simple integration looks like in Zapier. This is about as simple as it can get. This is an example for, that we use internally at Percolator. And so we have an object in Salesforce called a project, which represents, a project we're working with a client on. And all we want to do in this case is if someone puts in a new project in Salesforce, we want to broadcast that to our Slack to let people know, hey, a new project is getting underway. And that looks like this. Basically, you just put in a trigger, and that's always your first step. And what Zapier does is whenever this trigger occurs, then it will do all the following steps. You can have as many actions as you want that result from a trigger. In this case, there's only one action, which is to send a message to Slack. And it's very simple. You just tell it which which channel you want to post to, and then you tell it how to merge in the details from Salesforce, and it sends it. Very, very simple. So you can set something like this up in about 10 minutes. And one of the things about Zapier that I want to point out that is also different from some of the enterprise tools is that it gives you very fine-grained logging and control over what to do in the case that something doesn't run as expected. So as you can see, if I look at the history, it will actually show me each and every time it sent something over to Slack, it will log it as an event here, and I can go in here and look at the details, okay? And the other thing I can do is I can, if something didn't succeed, like it ran into a validation rule on the Salesforce side, or for some other reason it didn't go through, this will show error over here, and then I can go in there and rerun it. So if I need to change something on the Salesforce side or either side to make it go through, I can make that change and then attempt to rerun it. And so when you're talking about a low volume, this kind of very fine-grained logging and control over how these actions are taken, I think is really helpful. If you're talking about a high volume, this can quickly get a bit overwhelming. And I see a question. Can Zapier send a Slack to Salesforce, like log a case? Yeah, I think you can definitely do that. So anytime you're dealing with an app in Zapier, you can look it up, and then on a page like this, and it will list all of the actions and triggers that are available to you for that app. Okay, so if we look up Slack, we can see, let's see, where are the, oh no, sorry. Let's do this. That's the wrong page. Slack integrations, here we go. Yeah, so the triggers are new message posted to channel, right? So you could, since this is a trigger, you can point Zapier at a particular channel and say, when a new message is posted here, inspect it, decide if it qualifies for something that needs to go over to Salesforce, and if so, send it over to Salesforce. So yeah, no, that should be totally possible to do. And so this was the extremely simple example. I do want to point out that you can get much more involved. So this is another example that we also use internally, where when we have when we send out a new invoice in our QuickBooks, we want that to get synced over to our Salesforce and log the line items from the invoice into Salesforce in a custom object. And so this can connect to QuickBooks Online. The trigger is a new invoice. The one thing I want to point out here is that you can run code in Zapier. So it's got a JavaScript code element built in where you can basically you say, here's the input, the data that I want my JavaScript to run in, and then you write some JavaScript, and then it spits it out at the other end, and then the following steps can operate on the JavaScript output. Okay, so these kind of code things really allow you to take the data that you're getting and transform it into a completely different form. It also allows you to accomplish looping. This is something that's not really covered in the Zapier documentation very clearly, but normally it's one trigger and then each of these actions run once for that trigger. But if you include some JavaScript, you can set it up so that it will run these multiple times, which is what's happening here. An invoice can contain multiple line items. This prepares the data, and then these steps will happen once per line item. It'll find the corresponding project and insert a custom object record underneath that project. So that's an example of a slightly more complex integration, but it is still relatively simple and still relatively low volume. We don't get a ton of invoices every month, which is why Zapier is a good fit here. There's lots more you can do here. I'm not going to try to cover everything, but that's a quick overview.
That's fabulous, and I noticed you had sorry, I'm looking at your tabs. One about gravity forms. Were you going to?
Oh yeah, that's just another relatively simple example where this is something we also use. Where we have a gravity form up on our website for just like a contact us kind of thing, and we also use Zapier to get that into Salesforce. So the trigger in this case is a new form submission. You can have filter steps that say, if the form doesn't include X, then we don't want to put it in Salesforce, but if it does include X, then go ahead. In this case, we're creating a lead, and then if the lead has a particular field, then we're going to add the lead to a campaign. So another relatively simple example that involves gravity forms and getting that data into Salesforce.
That's a nice one, because I think that's kind of the sort of thing that could be generally applied across. And I know across a lot of organizations, and I know a lot of people think about Zapier, yes, exactly, and similar tools when they're looking at connecting maybe something like MailChimp or some other email tools. These sorts of connectors are great for using with broadcast email, aren't they? Particularly something like MailChimp.
Yeah, I mean, it depends what you're trying to do. I think they're great for, if you have, a form where if someone fills out the form, you just want to add that one person to your MailChimp list. I think it can be great for that. If you're wanting to do a more wholesale integration between Salesforce and MailChimp, I might look at something like Kazumi, which is more of a pre-built, full-fledged integration that can really sync your lists back and forth. But yeah, if you have other channels that people may come in that need to get added to MailChimp, then it could really work well for that.
Great, thank you. Fabulous. Does anyone else have any questions for Matthew, for Tyler, or for Nick? And yeah, Michael K is commenting on Kazumi's Salesforce to MailChimp integration. Yeah, it's a similar sort of. It works in it's a similar sort of connector, isn't it? But Kazumi have actually put a lot of the sort of the patterns, the methods, the recipes, I think that's what they're called, isn't it, in place.
Right.
So it's a much easier thing to set up. You can just kind of a lot of pointing and clicking, I think.
That's right. Yeah.
Great. Okay. Well, I'm waiting for a moment to see if. All right. And oh yes, there's some Kazumi. Okay. All right. Couple more comments about Kazumi. That it works well for both MailChimp and Constant Contact, and it's also it can integrate campaigns. Thank you for that, Barbara. Great. All right, your last chance for questions, anybody? Oh, yes, sorry, Cheryl. There was a rush of things that came in at the same time. So to anybody on the panel, Cheryl is asking about Salesforce to Salesforce. She says, I know it's old, but it still seems to work, and some clients have a situation for which it may be the best choice, but she's worried that it might suddenly disappear. So anyone want to talk on this idea of Salesforce to Salesforce? And that's where you would have two different Salesforce instances that are passing data across from one to the other. Anyone on the panel or elsewhere worked with that idea? Go for it,
I
Nick.
haven't looked into Salesforce to Salesforce for years.
Okay. Nick, you unmuted yourself. Go on.
I mean, I think when I've looked at the solution, it was probably 2 years ago. It didn't seem like it did everything I wanted, and so I looked into other means to connect Salesforce to another Salesforce org. So whether it be a Jitterbit or Boomi or whatever it is, kind of looking at other means to send data to and from, kind of just basically treating it as another source.
I'm going to echo that. Yeah, last time I looked at Salesforce to Salesforce has been a while. If there is any consternation around, like, is this tool going to disappear now that MuleSoft is around? I would lean on, yes, find a different third-party tool. But yeah, it's been a long time since I've had any hands-on experience with it.
Great, thank you. I think as you're all saying, that it may be a little more, that it was a bit more limited, and you're right now that Salesforce is setting up its whole integration cloud with MuleSoft. That's probably the direction that it's going to go. Okay. Thank you. Well, these have been really interesting, fascinating demos. And what's interesting is that such contrasts. I think we've given people a really great idea of some of the possibilities that are out there, and shown them different directions that they could go. And on various scales on your slide, Nick, of the sort of the quick and easy through the a bit more complicated, a bit more expensive, right up to the enterprise solution. So it's been very useful to see that range of things. So thank you very much indeed to our panel for providing that that outline. I have been recording the session, all being well, and assuming that nothing crashes when I log out here. I'll process that and make it available to everyone in the hub. So thank you everyone who's joined us. Again, thank you very much to the panel for their time. We're because it's coming into the summer and breaks and people being away, we're not doing another office hours session until the end of next month. We'll be back in the last week in July, general Q&A session. But otherwise, in the meantime, hope everybody, at least those who are joining us from North America, enjoy the holidays, and thank you very much, and see you all next time. And in the meantime, have a great weekend.
Thanks.